G'day Bifrosters, time for a new compound. Been a while, huh? What I have made is kind of a spiritual successor to Rockify, although it's not Rockify 2, because that worked in a completely different way. I have made myself a compound called Petrify, available from my pack. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. So what this does is it's a multifunctional displacer, if I was going to put marketing words to it, but basically it takes a surface and deforms it. And deforms it so that it kind of looks like a rock. As you can see, it has an input mesh. It's not doing anything, even though it's switched on, which means that I need to put a mesh into it to make it work. So let's make a mesh. So I'm going to create myself a platonic solid. 32 is pretty chunky. What I want to do is I want to take this guy up to like 128. So I've got a lot of geo to work with because at its heart, this is a displacer. So the more geo you give it, the more detail you see, which is great. That's what we want to see. Even though the higher resolution you go, the slower it gets. You can, of course, just make another platonic solid, the same settings, and then up the divisions. You've got a low res and a high res. You can work on the low res and switch over to the high res and see what you're doing. For now, let's just get started. So here we have basically an isosphere, nice and triangled. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to hide that. I'm going to bring it into Bifrost. I'm going to go to my Petrify. I'm going to turn off all of these things I don't want you to see just yet. Haha. And I'm going to drop the mesh into it. Immediately you see one big change. It hasn't done anything to the mesh yet. It has moved it up so that it sits at 0, 0, 0 at the bottom of the object because I've been making a lot of boulders recently. So let's look at the process here. First thing, if it's a boulder, you need to flatten its bum. There we are, bum flattened. You can change how that looks. So you can, adjust the shape of the object here quite happily. You can really flatten it out. You can maybe turn it into a UFO. Whatever you want to do. I'm going to stick with this because it's kind of rocky. It's wider on the bottom than it is on the top, but it's more of a sort of smarty shape or a pebble shape if you're from where I'm from. And then we're straight into the displacements. So inside of here, there are two cellular noises, two Wally noises, Voronoi, whatever you want to call them. And there's also a Voronoi mask. So we'll start with the displacement. Let's turn on the first displacement. You have two internal displacements, primary and secondary. And essentially what you're doing here is you're just displacing twice. That's all it's doing. But they're both cellular. They're both Wally, so they give you that sort of faceted rock look, which means you can use this for stylized. You can use this for a little bit more realistic. Whatever works for you is happy. And there's a bunch of tools that I'm releasing with this video that use this, which is why I'm doing it at 7 o'clock in the morning. That should be familiar to anybody who's done a bit of that. And you've got some settings for the primary cellular. Primary cellular, the first one is awake because the secondary cellular and the primary cellular work together. So when this is at 0, that is all the secondary. When it is 1, it is all the primary. So you get the idea, it's alert. So we'll leave it somewhere like that. I'm going to turn off the secondary just for now. Now I want to sort of start shaping this so it's a bit more rocky and a bit less sort of, I don't know, crumpled piece of paper. Very, very, very Voronoi, whatever. So I can change the magnitude of that pretty easily. And you can see this is quite fast at this resolution. I can change the frequency, which is quite simply the number of facets. So if I wanted to have, say, sort of quite a smooth rock like that, I could maybe push the magnitude up. And you can see that it's quite reactive. So it's quite fast and easy to get feedback. You've got a seed, and this is the master seed. So this will change all of the displacements. Let's get something like sort of something you might find next to a river, something like that, maybe. Maybe a couple more facets in there. Maybe just a bit more of it. Just so we've got a nice shape to start with, which is cool. There we go. Now, you've got to talk about how a cellular noise works. What a cellular noise needs is feature points, and you can see them there. So I've just turned them on the display settings, which is the feature points. These are the points that are making the facets. Takes every point in this object, finds out how close it is to each one of these points, and flattens it accordingly. And you can see when I change my frequency, say to 40, you get more points turning up. But we'll go back to 22. You can see that these are roughly in a cube around the object, and that's because the the scatter shape is set to axis bounds. You've got choices. Object bounds is the object-orientated bounds. Spherical bounds is the bounding sphere. And finally, you can scatter on the object yourself. This one, object bounds, would be very good if, say, it was rotated 30 degrees and much, much longer than it is high. So a muamua or something like that. You can change the way they're scattered. You should recognize this from scatter points. So random, blue noise maximal, all of that kind of thing. The next one, the distance metric, basically that tells the system how to look at the length, the distance from each point on the object to each feature point. It's Euclidean is your simple length, how long is my vector. Manhattan is basically Manhattan distance, but what it will do is look like that. So instead of the straight distance, it's the y and z distance, or the x and z distance. And then you've got Chebyshev, which is literally just the max distance to those points. What this lets you do is basically get some cheap and cheerful facets really quickly. We go back to Euclidean, and when you've got Euclidean, you can also adjust. So I can say pull this down, so you can see the difference there. Maybe pull this out a bit, something like that. And this is just going to adjust the shape of my displacement for me. Cool. So last thing you've got on your primary and secondary displacement, which we'll get to in a minute, is you can smooth that. So you can give it some smoothing iterations, and it gets kind of smoother. Just if you wanted to, say, erode bits of it, or erode just this displacement, or smooth just this displacement, that's what. So we're kind of a third of the way to a rock. We've got our basic shape down. Let's add a secondary displacement. So now you're starting to see facets. And the reason you're starting to see facets is that I've got, same set of controls, but I've got this set to the f point of 1. So instead of the closest point to the feature point, it's the next closest point to the feature point. And it makes the Wally do funky stuff. You can change that, and you can see I'm getting all kinds of different details. I wouldn't push it too high, because that kind of thing happens. But 1, 2, 3, it's going to give you some faceting, which is pretty nice. You can do same again, make it more regular like that. I can, of course, come up here and say, I want a bit less of that and a bit more of the primary, so you can balance these quite nicely. It's nice. Maybe I want to put a bit more frequency in that primary there. And again, you can smooth the secondary as well. So at this point, you've got basic rock shape happening. You can also take a look at the secondary points if you want to see that. That's a good start. So now you get to detail it. So you notice I've got 3 displacements here: primary, secondary, which I've just demoed, and details, right? So details is whatever you stick in here. And that's what this is for. It's for putting fields in. Basically, this is where you could go wild with it. So this is going to apply this displacement after it's done the other 2. Let's put down a field. I'm going to use one of the displacer fields. All right, so let's do fractal cell. I know it has some properties that are good. I'm just going to put that in a detail, and nothing's going to happen because details isn't switched on. I switch on details, boom. You can see exactly what's happening. It's gone crazy because the default settings on the 2D fractal cell are pretty high for displacer purposes, right? So we just need to go and change some things here. That's far too many octaves right now. And take that down to 6, maybe up to 8 to get a bit more detail back in. So that's looking okay. Frequency's fine. Magnitude needs to be something more like -1. And you can see the reason I'm using this guy is because it's giving me these. So it just adds to the rockishness of it. You can maybe push those in a bit further. So that's looking pretty good. Normal stuff, change how random that is, more or less. Let's translate the field a little bit, not like that. Do something a bit more like this. Just translates it up. Give it a bit of rotation around the z-axis. That's looking pretty good. And maybe I don't want these to be dead straight lines, so I can warp this field with another field. So if I put in the fractal turbulence field, like that, throw that into the warp field, you can see it immediately warps it. And because you're controlling this with another field, it's nice and fast. You can get something a bit more like that. That's already, even at the lower res, even at, everything, it's looking kind of a bit more rocky. Show you the difference. Turn it off. That's what you start with. Then use detail displacement. You can absolutely stack these. Detail fields as well. And you've got a secondary displacement. So magnitude for this, let's go to 2, or let's go to 0.2, whatever it is you want to do. You get the idea. That's the basis of it. You've got a couple of other things. You can mask the whole thing with a Voronoi that it generates for you. All right, so we'll turn these guys off, turn on the Voronoi mask. You can see what this is doing. This is literally masking the displacement. Then you've got field masks. Field masks are just the same as that. Fractal noise field. I'm just going to use a default field at the moment. Thank you, Bifrost. Plug that guy into the mask field, and it's going to change this. And you can see this mask in action in the display settings. You can come down here and you say, show me the field mask. And it's showing you where it's masking. And change my frequency, change the number of frequencies, so more or less detailed field. And then I can come back here and I can go, all right, so here's my field mask. I want to adjust it. So perhaps I want a bit more black. And you can see that it's adjusting the rock mask in real time. There is less displacement in the black than there is in the white. And then when you've got no field mask, but you've still got display on, it's going to go black. You've got some post sort of, you've got one post thing you can do, which is, or two actually. You can smooth the output. So you can say, oh, look, I want the whole thing smoother, like that. So it's a bit more eroded or whatever, but that's going to do all three displacements. You can tell it to preserve the detail a little bit. You get that kind of thing. You can invert it, except that would require weights, and that is in post smoothing. You've got an interpreted autoport here that will take the same number of points as this, or a field, and which allows you to smooth based on the weight. So if you wanted to say plug in my fractal noise field over here, play with it, and for the love of Bifrost, like tell me what's wrong with it so I can fix it. Other than that, you can scale the displacement. So that scales all three at once. If you want a bit less, you can do that. You want a bit more, you can do that. You can change the seed. And this is the master seed, so this changes everything. So at this point, you're ready to take a look at it, render it, like do whatever it is you want to do with it. Fine. But it's kind of still a bit like soft and fluffy, and that's because the resolution is not high enough. And this is where we can go back into Maya and just push this right up. So let's go to 256. Now give it a second, because the more you put in, the longer it takes. That's looking a bit better. Maybe go to 512. Now we wait a little bit longer. Or through the magic of video, I'll just cut this bit out. So, you know, it's not the world's most accurate rock. I haven't simulated erosion over 4 billion years or whatever. You can get quite a lot of different looks out of it. So yeah, that's Petrify. Have fun. I'll be uploading a couple of other files with this, but this is how Petrify works. All right. Thanks everyone, and have a really good day.